In today's example, we are going to be doing a background, but it's not, it's part of the actual picture. So this is a double page spread from Rory Dobner's The Ink House, and the elephant is already lightly shaded gray, and I kind of want to leave that the way it is. But what I want to do is add a light pastel kind of tealy green background to the wall, so that the elephant kind of stands out a bit more. I have grabbed my gelato set. I have the pastel 15 pieces set, and I have selected the color Aqua Dolce, and it's an aquamarine. So the other tools I'll be using are just a variety of makeup brushes that I use. Applying gelatos dry with a makeup brush leaves a very light, smooth, well covered area, and I don't plan on having it being modeled, so it will take me a while to get this done. I am also going to be careful not to get it on the image, although with gelato, if you catch it early enough, you can erase if you do get it on the image, but I will certainly try and not get it on. I don't want to put down drawing gum on this due to the fact that I rubbed quite hard with the gelato and it would actually lift up the drawing gum. So sometimes you have to use like sticky notes as a mask, so I may do that, but that's just kind of my reasoning of why I didn't do masking fluid over this picture while I have in others. So I've got a little palette. This is from my Tim Holtz media mat. I just pulled it right off the mat, and it's kind of staticky, and I am going to use that as my rough surface to rub the gelato directly on. I'm going to need to do this multiple times, so we'll just put some product down. I'm going to use the largest paint makeup brush to start with and do the open areas, and then I will use the smaller paint makeup brushes to do the areas closer to the image. When I do get close to the image, I am going to grab some sticky notes like I mentioned, and so I'll just grab those now so I have them handy. The reason I like to use sticky notes is obviously because they're sticky on one side and they can be kind of just picked up and moved and positioned as I'm going. So I'm just going to get some product on my brush, and I'm going to come in from the side and in circular motions. Sometimes I also use my hand as a guide, so I'm not getting into areas I don't want. And if you do lighter pressure, then it's a little bit easier to get rid of harsh lines if you accidentally do create them. It's just nice circular motions. This is going to take a while, so I will stop talking now, speed up the camera, and let you listen to a little bit of music. As you can see, I've just got a light coverage going on, and I don't have any harsh lines. You just keep lightly, even without adding any product to your brush, just keep smoothing it out, and that's how you get a nice smooth blend. I do find that blending gelatos is a lot easier for me than blending ink. My ink I usually leave for when I'm doing a modeled technique like skies and stuff, but gelatos I can usually get a fairly even coverage, and so that's why I chose. And I want a nice soft painted kind of looking background, as if it was the wall paint in the house. So, and nice clean edge with the by using the mask. I'll continue on and we'll be back with when I have made more progress. I'll pop back in to talk a little bit about why I like using the brushes for applicating gelato. It's not only can I get a good, consistent, smooth background, but it also allows me to get into like the spine area. A brush is able to move and squish and get right down into the spine, and that's a big plus. You can't get into the spine that well when you're using an ink blending tool or one of the round domed tools. So that's another plus reason for grabbing a cheap makeup brush from the Dollar Tree. I'm getting into some smaller areas now, so I've pulled out some of the smaller makeup brushes I have. So I've got a tiny little round one and then a narrow longer one. So those are all from the Dollar Tree or part of a set from Amazon. It just allows me to get into the tiny closer areas, and then I can come in with the larger one and blend into them. Okay, so this half of the page is done, and I just wanted to show you the difference. So it is a very nice, light, consistent coverage. It will dry and be permanent when it's dry. You do need to leave it for a couple of, at least a day. You can erase right away, so if I've got a few spots that need to be erased, just take a regular type of eraser and you can clean up some areas. I would not wait until items have totally dried before you erase them. I would erase them right away if you can. I just got some green on his eye, so I'll just take an eraser and get rid of that. I will continue on with the rest of this page, but you will see this completed page in a future completed pages video. But this is as easy as it is to do a gelato background, and this is just one way to use them. I will show you some other ways that I use gelatos in my background in another example. The next example that we're going to use gelatos with is a PDF book, and it's a page from Chris Brainiac's Morning Scribbles, the Frogs and Friends edition. This is a little space page. I will first do a dark background, and I have two gelato sets. I have the pastel set and the metallic set. So this is my darkest one. It's in the metallic set and it's iced coffee. So as you can see, it's rather dark. I'm going to pick up my largest brush and I'm going to put this on it. So I will continue on and complete this stage, and then I will be back. And I do want to do a fairly solid cover, so it's not going to be looking cloud-like, but I'll get as much on it as possible. Using a combination of a mask that I use for my other circulars, plus Post-it notes. I will make sure that I've covered areas so I'm not getting any gelato on the picture itself. And as long as you are keeping your going in circles it keeps fairly smooth. And this is metallic, so it is going to be a little bit shiny, but that's okay. I'm happy for that. So I will just keep moving these Post-it notes around. And for the tiny, tiny areas, I can bring in a tiny brush. To get closer to the items. Bring you back for a look at how we're doing. I'm just doing this on a cutting mat, and I'm using my Tim Holtz media mat here. I'm just using this instead of my glass mat to hopefully cut down on glare. And because I disc bind my books, I'm able to remove this from the actual coloring book and get into the whole page, have access to the whole page. Okay, we've got a fairly nice heavy coat of the iced coffee gelato. It's a metallic gelato all over the page. Now I'm going to I have a few stencils. I've got a variety of stars stencils, and I've also got some spaceships and some more stars and a planet. So I thought it would be kind of fun to maybe see how a planet would look, and also maybe the little spaceship and some stars. A color that is going to show up. So I'm going to pick the iced pear, and I'm going to take a smaller stencil brush, ice that up, and I'm going to gelato stencil. So this is gelato on top of gelato. And I'm holding the stencil down firm. And it would be ideal to tape it, but okay. And because it's metallic, it'll shine and show up. So we're going to leave that. And we're going to now come and see if we can add some stars. I'm going to take some silver and we're going to do some silver stars. And again, a good coat, and then lift it straight up. So we're going to do that with a few bright colors. We're using all metallic so that they'll all have a shine. Do a bunch. We'll speed the camera up a bit. Gelato will be permanent once we leave it to dry. So it is not as quick as ink because we are going to have to let it dry. And since they're all metallic, I'm not actually changing my brushes in between these colors, because I don't actually mind if they get kind of mixed in. And I can come back in and outline this planet with this silver or a green gel pen at the end after it is all dried as well. And that'll really make it stand out and pop. Here is how the page turned out. I went and added a bit more green gelato just to the planet itself, and once it's dry I may come in and do an outline, or I may just leave it with the background the way it is, and we will let it dry before I complete the actual picture. So that is my second example of using gelatos on a background. So this example is already done, but I did want to show you a couple examples of how I've used gelatos in my coloring books. And this is the one for the way home. And this is a lot of different colored gelatos, just dry brushed on in a kind of a tie-dye pattern. This page is an example of dry brushing some ink and then coming back after and dry brushing on metallic gelato using a stencil. So this is combining ink and gelatos. This is another example of gelatos in the page, and what I simply did in this instance was take my circular mask. I took my circular mask, I put some gelato on each around the edges directly onto the page, and then I took my finger and smeared upwards, and that produced a star-like effect. I then came in with stickles in basically the same color as the gelato, and put it underneath each of the gelato sections. And this actually works really well for doing a Northern Lights type sky, and I'll show you an example of that. So this example is from Erie's Romantic Country Second Tale, and I have done the Northern Lights, and I've used gelato or silky gel crayon. It's the same kind of texture. I drew a line underneath with different colored metallic markers and the gelato, and I just pushed upwards with my finger, and that created a ribbon of light in the sky similar to the Northern Lights. So that's another example of how I use them in the background. I also used gelato directly on here as a crayon. So let's try that. And I will pick this color, which is caramel, and we're going to put some directly onto this and just lightly apply some. And then the gelatos actually come with two sponges. One is very, very firm and one is very soft. So I'm going to take the firm one and I'm just going to mush it around. So while this isn't a background, you can see how the gelato is actually quite effective. And then whilst it's on the page, if you needed to just smooth it out, you could use a water brush. If you just wanted to smooth it out a bit. So that's another way of using your gelatos. I'll finish up this box and we'll be right back. There we go. So I could actually complete this whole page with gelatos if I really wanted to. But that would be testing the paper quite a bit since it is not treated. But small areas like this are fine. So gelatos are actually a water-based medium, and so I have been showing you only using gelato dry so far. So you can use gelatos wet. They do work best if you have watercolor paper. I do not have this printed on watercolor paper, and I do not have it treated. So normally I would treat the paper, but I don't have any treated paper right now. So I'm going to show you how you could use it on a cardstock type heavier paper that is not treated. So you still need to keep your water very low. One last example before leaving gelatos, and that is using them wet. So on my palette I simply smeared some gelato onto a plate, then using a spray bottle spritzed a bit of water onto it, basically getting it into a paint format, and then I can come directly onto the page and paint similar to a watercolor. Goes on very smooth. This is the metallic one, so even after it dries there will be a metallic sheen, so that is nice. So while I don't do this very often using it wet, it does apply actually pretty nicely. So if you have gelatos that you maybe can't dry brush due to hand issues, you could add a little bit of water and once that dries you'll see the metallic there. I'm just gonna, with a paintbrush it is able to be a little bit more precise than with perhaps a brush. So if that's something that you would prefer to do, I'm going to get some on. Okay, and that is the final way to apply gelato to your page. This actually works quite well if you were using a stencil. So let me grab a stencil. So one quick extra way to use gelato wet is just applying a little bit of gelato. I have taped off an area on the stencil, and I'm just going to go over, and now you can use a sponge, and in fact I will use a sponge on the next one. So there is one. I'm going to grab a sponge that comes with the gelato set. Comes with both a hard and a soft sponge. I'm going to use the soft sponge this time. I'm going to pick up the gelato and I'm going to stencil with that. And that is a much more controlled way of doing it. And as you can see with this one, there's some seepage underneath. So if you're trying to be neat and tidy, the sponge method I find works much better. And it also kind of cleans up the gelato plate. And there you have it. So this is gelato full strength using a hard sponge to apply it. This is gelato with water applied with a paintbrush. and this is gelato with the paintbrush and a stencil with the soft sponge. So lots of ways to apply gelatos, and that's the last example for my gelato background video. My final example of a gelato background is one that I'm currently working on Romantic Country, the second tale, and I had already done this page, and this background is ink, and on the opposite side I'm doing a background on gelato. So I've used the yellow pastel gelato on this side, and I have dry rubbed it onto the background, and now the pages will actually go fairly well together. So I didn't know where this ink was from, so I went ahead and I just kind of recreated the page on the opposite side, but I'm using gelatos. So this will be in a future video of completed pages. But those are some easy examples of how I use gelatos in my backgrounds. So thank you for joining me today in a video on backgrounds using gelatos. Just to recap, I used a single gelato and a brush, and just dry brushed on this background. It makes for a very nice solid light background. You can color over top of it. I do like to use it this way, and the pastel colors that I do have work really well. I then used this for an overall metallic background, doing the entire page and then coming back in later and stenciling on additional elements with different contrasting colors still in the metallic gelatos. So this is another way to use the gelatos. And then on this page I used the gelato full strength and then also watered down, and as you can see there's still a shine and a nice pearlescent kind of finish to the metallic gelato, and I finished it off with a few stencils on top. So gelatos are one of my favorite backgrounds to use. I find them simple. They are a little less crumbly than, say, the gel crayons that I own, so that just could be the variety of crayons that I have. So I use them basically in the same way, but I just wanted to show you in a separate video the gelatos, since some people specifically are looking for just those mediums. Until next time, have a creative and colorful week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.